The townspeople of Bramble Creek still remember the morning it happened, the morning the sun rose over the mesa like a molten copper coin, throwing long shadows across the dry earth. People would later say that the air had felt strange, thick with a tension they couldn't name, as if something old and buried had begun to stir beneath the crust of the desert. But none of them could have guessed what the rancher, Elias Crowder, was about to do. And how it would tear the town in two. Elias lived 5 miles outside town, on land his great-grandfather had claimed when Bramble Creek was little more than scattered tents. The Crowder Ranch had always been the spine of the community, a place where neighbors found work when times were lean, where cattle auctions funded town festivals, where harvest cookouts brought laughter to the dusty evenings. People trusted the Crowders, even admired them. But Elias, the last Crowder left, had grown into a solitary sort of man. He was polite, but you could never quite tell what storm was brewing behind those pale gray eyes. He had lost his wife years ago, and some said he'd never recovered. Others whispered he'd become obsessed with things better left alone. The trouble began one scorching July afternoon when the ground behind the ranch house split open after a rare thunderstorm. Elias had gone to inspect the damage, expecting nothing more than eroded soil. Instead, he found a cavern, dark, narrow, and breathing cold air. And there at the entrance lay an object that didn't belong, a carved stone tablet, brittle with age, etched with symbols older than any tribe known to the region. Most folks would have left it alone. Most folks would have covered the cave back up and called the county geologist or the museum in Santa Fe. But Elias Crowder was not most folks. He carried the tablet into his barn, dusted it off, and stared at the symbols for hours. Something about them tugged at him, as if a voice were whispering below the edge of consciousness. By nightfall he was running his fingers along the carvings, muttering to himself, pacing like a man possessed. That was when old May Turner, his nearest neighbor, came knocking with a peach cobbler and concern in her eyes. May had known Elias since he'd been a tow-headed boy chasing stray calves through her fields. She sensed when something was wrong. She saw the tablet. She flinched. "Elias, don't. Whatever that is, leave it be." But Elias only smiled, tight and brittle. "It's history," he said. "Something people forgot. Something people shouldn't have forgotten. Don't do this, Elias." He didn't listen. 2 days later he was in town, telling Sheriff Reuben Dolan and Mayor Joyce Hadley that he'd discovered something significant on his land. The mayor urged caution, saying experts should analyze it first. Sheriff Dolan stared at Elias with a look that said he didn't like where this was going. "Elias," the sheriff said quietly, "if that's something sacred, or dangerous, or both, just be careful." But Elias was already beyond persuasion. Something had taken root in him, a conviction as harsh and inflexible as desert bedrock. The townsfolk heard rumors before they heard facts. Some said Elias was planning to break open the cavern and remove what lay inside. Others said he believed the cave held artifacts that could rewrite local history. A few claimed he spoke of waking something up, though no one ever confirmed he'd said those exact words. Still, it was enough to stir unease. A town meeting was called. Elias didn't show. May Turner rose and told the room that Elias had been acting strange. "He's not himself," she said. "It's like something's pulling him toward something he shouldn't be near." The mayor sent Sheriff Dolan to check on him the next morning. But by dawn, it was already too late. The groaning rumble that rolled across Bramble Creek at sunrise jolted people awake. Windows rattled. Birds fled the cottonwoods. Dust swirled through the streets before the wind even touched it. Folk stepped outside, squinting toward the distant ranch. Then they saw it. A column of black dirt and shattered rock rose into the sky like a geyser. The earth roared, a deep, hungry sound, and the ground trembled as if some great machine were grinding beneath the surface. Sheriff Dolan didn't wait for backup. He sped toward the ranch with May Turner's truck following close behind. When they arrived, Elias Crowder stood at the mouth of the cavern. The barn doors were flung open behind him, the tablet propped against a post. Elias himself looked altered. Not physically, but in expression. His normal reserve had twisted into something feverish. His hands were pressed to the cavern wall, and the stone seemed to pulse, faintly glowing under his touch. "Elias," the sheriff shouted, stumbling out of the cruiser as the ground vibrated under his boots. "Step away." May stood frozen, hands shaking at her sides. "Elias, please," she whispered. "Don't do this." Elias turned, smiled a brittle, ecstatic smile, and said, "I have to. It's calling." What happened next became the subject of endless debate. Some swore they saw a shape stir in the darkness beyond the cavern, a ripple of movement, like something waking up from long sleep. Others said it was only dust and shadow. But everyone agreed on one thing: the air grew suddenly icy, colder than any desert morning had a right to be. The sheriff moved first, lunging toward Elias, but the ground heaved upward, throwing him back. Elias stepped deeper into the cave, ignoring May's cry. "Elias! Don't!" But the rancher did it anyway. He pressed both palms against a carved stone slab inside the cavern. With a grinding moan, the slab slid away, revealing a second chamber. A burst of frigid wind blasted outward, sending Sheriff Dolan and May reeling. The wind carried a sound, low, mournful, like a distant wail. Elias staggered but didn't stop. He stepped into the chamber. And then the earth convulsed. The ceiling collapsed. By the time the shaking stopped and the dust cleared, the chamber had caved in completely. Elias Crowder was gone, sealed beneath tons of stone. May screamed, but her voice was lost in the echoing silence. The sheriff dragged her away as rocks continued to tumble. They barely made it out alive. News spread fast. The whole town drove out to the ranch, forming a crowd along the property fence. They saw the ruined cave, the churned earth, the broken barn. They heard May's tear-choked recounting of Elias disappearing into the dark. And outrage flared, not at May, not at the sheriff, but at Elias himself. How could he do something so reckless? What if he unleashed something dangerous? That man had no right to disturb whatever was buried in there. He's doomed us all. The town, once united in quiet admiration for the Crowder family, turned bitter. Some cursed Elias for his stubbornness. Others feared what he might have awakened. They demanded the cavern be sealed permanently, the ranch cordoned off, and the site declared hazardous. Sheriff Dolan complied, ordering concrete to be poured into the crevice and fencing off the entire area. But fear lingered. Strange things began happening in the following weeks. Cattle refused to graze near the fence line. Coyotes avoided the property entirely. Some nights, people reported hearing faint, keening sounds drifting across the fields, like wind, but not quite. The mayor shrugged it off as superstition, but the town knew better. Bramble Creek had always respected the land, its mysteries, and its silences. Elias Crowder had broken that unspoken pact. Autumn came early that year. The trees along the creek turned gold before their time. The nights grew colder. Folks whispered that the air near the Crowder ranch felt wrong, tinged with a metallic chill. Sheriff Dolan visited weekly, though he never stayed long. May refused to go at all. One evening, 3 months after the collapse, a violent dust storm tore across the mesa. Wind howled through the streets, shutters clattered, and children hid under blankets. When the storm finally died, people stepped outside to assess the damage. That's when they saw it. The concrete seal at the Crowder ranch had cracked open, fissures spreading like veins across the hardened surface. A group of townspeople gathered the next morning, staring from a safe distance. None dared cross the fence. "Whatever's in there," one man muttered, "it ain't resting easy." The sheriff ordered more concrete, more reinforcement. But the murmurs grew. The town wasn't just outraged anymore, they were afraid.